The immortal confinement dungeon lived up to its name. Its interior was as oppressive as the worst prisons, dark and suffocating, with damp stone walls that trapped the stench of decay. The air was thick with the foul mix of sweat, blood, and something more sinister, a scent that spoke of countless souls who had suffered within its depths. The lowest floor was even worse. Though it held the fewest prisoners, the air was thick with the overwhelming stench of blood and rotting flesh, so pungent that it nearly made Renshaw gag. The walls seemed to breathe with the agony of those who had long perished here, and every step forward felt like wading deeper into a place forsaken by time and mercy. That feeling of despair only grew stronger as they moved past the cells, their eyes falling upon the prisoners within. Each one was shackled to the cold stone walls, their bodies stripped bare, stripped of dignity. But what was most harrowing was that none of them even looked human anymore. Their skin was a grotesque tapestry of black, blue, and red, evidence of relentless beatings and unspeakable torture. Most of them were also missing limbs. Some missed only one or two, but a few didn't have any limbs at all. Although Renshaw had heard rumors about the immortal confinement dungeon being a cruel place, she could have never imagined it was in such a condition. As for Tian Yang, he wasn't surprised, but he was full of disgust and anger. Culez has been trapped in this hell for over 50 years. Even if I save him, he might not be the same Culez I once knew. Tian Yang clenched his jaw, his fists tightening as a wave of unease washed over him. He had to be prepared for the worst, for the possibility that the man he sought to rescue was no longer the one he remembered. However, even if Culez was an entirely different individual, he still wanted to save him. If only I had arrived sooner, he sighed inwardly. When they reached a certain cell, Renshaw suddenly stopped to look at the individual inside, her eyes raised in a puzzled manner. Seeing this, the guard said, "Since this is the madam's first time coming to the lowest floor, you probably don't even recognize him." "What are you talking about?" Renshaw looked at the guard with a questioning expression. The guard smiled and said, "Don't be too surprised to hear this, but that's Culez." "What?" Renshaw exclaimed in a shocked voice. "Culez." Tian Yang's eyes also widened with shock after hearing this. Neither Renshaw nor Tian Yang recognized Culez at first until the guard pointed him out. But they couldn't be blamed for their failure to recognize him. The man before them bore no resemblance to the Culez they once knew. However, it wasn't the scars of torture that made Culez unrecognizable. The man who was once a handsome young man had undergone a transformation beyond comprehension. He had become massive, so colossal that even while kneeling, he stood as tall as a building, his body towering over them, far beyond the size of any normal human. That's Culez. What happened to him?" Renshaw asked out of curiosity. "We don't know what exactly caused his transformation, but we believe it's due to a technique he'd acquired from Han Zexian's tomb since the Immortal Might clan denied having such a technique," said the guard. Renshaw swallowed nervously. She turned to look at Tian Yang, who was staring at Culez without blinking. "Well, what are you going to do now?" she asked. "Excuse me." The guard thought Renshaw was speaking to him. "Shut up. I'm not talking to you," she snapped at him. What? The guard could only stand there with a dazed look on his face as he tried to comprehend what had just happened. "Release me," Tian Yang said a moment later. Renshaw nodded and removed his handcuffs. What are you doing, Madame Ren?" Shocked by her actions, the guard jumped back and instinctively drew his weapon. After being released from his handcuffs, Tian Yang retrieved a recovery pill and consumed it, healing all of the injuries on his body. He then shifted his gaze to the now alert guard, his eyes sharp and overwhelming. In a cold, threatening tone, he commanded, "Open Culez, cell." "Who are you? Do you have any idea what you're doing?" The guard roared as he released his cultivation at the Divine Master realm. In response, Tian Yang exuded his immortal ascension cultivation, forcing the guard onto his knees with just presence alone. "I will not ask you again," Tian Yang said, his voice ice cold as he unsheathed his sword. "If you do not release him, I will kill you and open the cell myself." The guard's already pale face drained of what little color remained, turning as white as a corpse. He was painfully aware of his predicament. Before Tian Yang, he was nothing more than an ant, utterly powerless to resist. Yet, obeying Tian Yang's demand was no better. The 9 immortal clans would undoubtedly dispose of him for his betrayal. No matter what he chose, death awaited him. In the end, the guard made his choice. If death was inevitable, he would rather take his chances with the 9 immortal clans than face certain execution at this very moment. With trembling hands, he stepped forward and, without another word, unlocked Cula's cell. Tian Yang removed his disguise and approached Cula's, who had his head down and appeared to be asleep. Ahem. Tian Yang quickly cleared his throat, steadying himself before speaking in a calm voice. Brother Cula's, it's me, Tian Yang. I'm here to rescue you. His words hung in the air, met with nothing but silence. Let alone speak a word, Cula's didn't even bother to lift his head to look at Tian Yang, almost as if he wasn't conscious. However, Tian Yang was certain that Cula's was awake and decided to try again. Seeing that Cula's didn't respond, Tian Yang tried again. Brother Cula's, can you hear me? It's me, Tian Yang. It's useless. A voice responded, but it didn't come from Cula's. Instead, it came from the guard. What do you mean by that? Tian Yang looked at him with a deep frown. He hasn't uttered a single sound for the last 20 years, not even a grunt when he's being interrogated, the guard explained. When the guard mentioned being interrogated, he was obviously talking about torture. However, when Tian Yang looked at Cula's body, there was not a single scar on it. In fact, it was perfectly healthy and incredibly robust, almost as if he'd trained it vigorously for many years. Tian Yang took a deep breath and continued, Cula's, how long are you going to ignore me? Wake up already. Ren Sha entered the cell and said, looks like you wasted your time coming here. However, Tian Yang wasn't ready to give up. He retrieved his sword and destroyed the chains that bound Cula's. The moment the chains binding Cula's shattered and fell to the ground in fragments, his massive body stirred for the first time. Without warning, a colossal fist, larger than Tian Yang's entire body, shot toward him with terrifying speed and force. The sheer pressure of the strike howled through the air, distorting space around it. There was no hesitation, no recognition, only raw, unrestrained aggression. This crazy bastard, Tian Yang cursed, his instincts kicking in as he hastily raised his sword to block the incoming strike. The moment Cula's massive fist collided with his blade, an overwhelming force surged through him. Even as an immortal Ascension Realm cultivator, he was utterly powerless to fully withstand the impact. The immense power behind the blow sent him hurtling through the air like a rag doll, slamming into the wall with a deafening crash. Tian Yang, Ren Sha cried in a surprised voice. I'm fine, Tian Yang said as he quickly stood back up. He narrowed his eyes at Cula's, whose cultivation was only at the peak of Divine King. He's only a Divine King, yet he sent me flying with sheer strength alone. What kind of monstrous power is this? Could this be the result of the great mammoth body refinement? Tian Yang's mind raced as he steadied himself. He had also learned the great mammoth body refinement, so he understood its principles, how it refined the body through relentless tempering, forging it into something indestructible, something beyond human limits. But what he had just witnessed was far beyond his expectations, even his comprehension. The great mammoth body refinement requires constant pain and suffering to grow. His gaze darkened. Could the torture he endured in this wretched place have tempered his body to such an extreme? The thought sent a chill down Tian Yang's spine. He couldn't begin to imagine the agony Cula's must have suffered to reach this state, how much pain, how much torment, how many times he had been pushed past the brink of death and forced to survive. So this is how you greet your sworn brother after not seeing each other for over 50 years, huh? Tian Yang spat out a mouthful of blood and continued, very well. If I have to beat you back to your senses, then so be it. Without hesitation, he lunged forward, and the cell erupted into chaos as Tian Yang and Cula's clashed. Despite its designation as a prison cell, this space was anything but small. The 9 immortal clans had built it specifically to contain Cula's, anticipating not only his current size but also his future growth. The result was a massive chamber, its walls reinforced with powerful formations to withstand the sheer might of its prisoner. Now, that very space has become their battlefield. Cula's colossal fists tore through the air with devastating force, each strike capable of reducing a mountain to rubble. Tian Yang weaved through the attacks, his blade flashing like lightning as he retaliated with precision and speed. The air trembled with each impact, shockwaves rippling through the dungeon as the battle escalated. Yet, despite his overwhelming strength, Cula's fought with a terrifying emptiness, his eyes void of recognition, his attacks fueled by nothing but raw instinct. Ren Sha quickly left the cell and shouted at Tianyang, "I can't believe you're actually fighting him in this situation. Did you really come here to save him? Do you have any other way to wake him up? If so, I'd love to hear it." Tianyang shouted back, frustration laced in his voice. No matter how many times he slashed at Culez, his sword barely left more than shallow cuts, wounds that healed almost instantly, as if mocking his efforts. The great mammoth body refinement had turned Culez into an indomitable force, his body regenerating faster than Tianyang could damage it. "If you, his sworn brother, cannot wake him up, what can I do? He hates my guts." Renshaw shook her head. "Looks like I have no choice but to defeat him." Tianyang sighed as he activated Limitless Sword Domain. Culez's body suddenly trembled. That technique. For the first time, Culez spoke words. "What?" Tianyang's body instantly froze. "How did you get that technique? Tell me, you damned bastard." Culez roared, his voice shaking the very walls of the dungeon. A terrifying killing intent erupted from his massive form, flooding the space like a crushing tide. His eyes, once void of recognition, now burned with unrestrained fury. His rage was no longer mindless. There was something personal behind it. "Did you already forget? I learned it inside Han Zexian's tomb." Tianyang responded. However, Culez's killing intent only intensified. "What did you do to my brother, you bastards? I swear I will tear everyone from the 9 immortal clans apart if you had harmed him in any way." Tianyang raised his eyebrows in a confused manner after hearing Culez's words. "What the heck? Does he think I am someone from the 9 immortal clans pretending to be me?" He wondered. "I think he thinks you're a fake." Ren Sha warned Tianyang. "Thanks for stating the obvious," Tianyang said to her before looking at Culez and stating, "Culez, open your damn eyes and look at me. Do I look like a fake to you? Shut the fuck up. Do you really think I am stupid enough to fall for such an obvious trick? There's no way my brother would be here, not to mention your cultivation. As much as I believe in him, there's no way he could have achieved immortal ascension so quickly." Culez shouted back. Due to how much stronger Tianyang had gotten, Culez didn't believe it was truly him. Moreover, the 9 immortal clans have tried tricking him before with this very tactic. He'd have to be a fool to fall for it. "I got this strong because of Han Zexian's legacy. Also, if I were a fake, would I know the Limitless Sword Domain? I even know the technique that caused your body to become like that. If you don't believe me, I can tell you the technique again. And how do I know that you didn't torture those techniques out of my brother like you tried to me?" Culez roared, revealing his true reason for not trusting Tianyang. After the 9 immortal clans captured Culez, they tortured him day and night without stopping for many years in hopes of acquiring whatever secrets he obtained from Han Zexian's tomb. However, they were unsuccessful, and not only did they fail to break his mental barriers, but they even helped him become stronger by tempering his body through torture. "Fuck, why are you so stubborn? If information doesn't prove my identity, how can I prove to you that I am real? Tell me, Culez." Tianyang shouted back. Although he found the situation annoying, he couldn't blame Culez for his behavior. If he had been in Culez's shoes, he would have probably been even less trusting. "Actually, you know what? I don't need words to convince you." Tianyang stowed away his weapon and pointed at the open cell door. "I have opened your cell and even removed your chains. You're basically free to leave. Oh, but unless you're an array master, you probably won't be able to activate the teleport formation to reach the exit." Tianyang walked to the exit and said to the guard, "Activate the formation." Right away, the guard immediately listened, as there was no longer any reason for him to resist. Once the teleport formation was activated, Tianyang gestured at it and said to Culez, "Go ahead. You're free now. My goal here is to rescue you, and I have achieved that. Whatever you do afterward is up to you." Culez looked at Tianyang and the teleport formation with a trembling gaze. Could it really be him? Am I dreaming? No, this is too real to be a dream. Am I hallucinating? Or is this an illusion by the 9 immortal clans? He wondered inwardly. Although Culez still couldn't tell if Tianyang was real or fake, he recognized this was a chance for him to escape the immortal confinement dungeon. If this is a trap, then so be it. The next moment, Culez rushed out of the cell and ran toward the teleport formation. His massive figure disappeared the moment he stepped onto it. Let's go, Ren Sha. Tian Yang said to her. Ren Sha nodded and entered the teleport formation with Tian Yang shortly after. By the time they returned to the first floor, Culez was already halfway out of the entrance. What the? Culez, why are you out of your cell? The guard outside the cave was bewildered to see Culez and immediately tried to stop him. However, Culez was powerful enough to overwhelm an immortal ascension cultivator like Tian Yang, so the guard had no chance against him. With a single slap, Culez sent the guard flying like a rag doll. Tian Yang and Ren Sha watched as Culez's figure quickly disappeared into the endless highlands. Are you sure this was the right choice? Ren Sha asked him. Tian Yang sighed, what other choices do I have? He won't listen to me, and I have no idea how to prove my identity. Honestly, it doesn't matter if he believes in me or not. At the end of the day, I have achieved my goal and rescued Culez. But to let him go like this, what if he's captured again by the 9 immortal clans? Ren Sha looked at him with raised eyebrows. After a moment of silence, a slight smile appeared on Tian Yang's face as he responded, I believe in Culez, but if he does end up back in the immortal confinement dungeon, I'll just save him again. I'll save him as many times as I need to. After all, this is what it means to be sworn brothers. Although Ren Sha didn't understand Tian Yang's feelings or what it meant to be sworn brothers, she couldn't help but be envious of his relationship with Culez. What now? Ren Sha then asked. I'll continue my journey. And what kind of journey is that? Tian Yang turned to look at her with a serious expression. To erase the 9 immortal clans from existence. Ren Sha swallowed nervously. What? Do you regret helping me? It's not too late to change your mind, you know. If I kill the 2 guards, nobody will know of your betrayal, and you can return to your family. Ren Sha sneered, the word regret is not in my dictionary, and I'd rather die than return to my family. If you're serious about destroying the 9 immortal clans, I'll assist you. As a matter of fact, we can start with the Immortal Sword clans since I have the most information on them, whether it be their strengths or weaknesses. Ren Sha's words sent chills down Tian Yang's entire body. Her ruthless nature was beyond his expectations. However, as much as he appreciated her help, if she was willing to betray her own family, Tian Yang worried she might one day betray him. No, let's not make any assumptions. I don't even know her reason for betraying her family. Let's just trust her, for now. Tian Yang turned to look at where Culez had disappeared and muttered, until next time, brother. After rescuing Culez, Tian Yang and Ren Sha left the endless highlands and disappeared from the world. Soon, news of the events at the immortal confinement dungeon reached the ears of the 9 immortal clans, quickly plunging them into a state of panic. After all, not only did Culez escape, but the immortal confinement dungeon's location was also leaked to their enemy. Although the 9 immortal clans wanted to investigate the situation further, they had to prioritize changing the immortal confinement dungeon's location. Once the immortal confinement dungeon had been swiftly relocated to a new, undisclosed location, the 9 immortal clans wasted no time launching a full-scale investigation into the incident. Every detail surrounding the incident was scrutinized, and every potential lead was pursued. It didn't take long before all evidence converged on a single source, the Immortal Sword clan. When questioned, the Immortal Sword clan denied having any involvement at first, but when they learned of Ren Sha's actions and realized she had betrayed her own family, the Immortal Sword clan had no choice but to tell the truth. They revealed that Tian Yang had kidnapped Ren Sha and demanded the immortal confinement dungeon's location in exchange for her life. I swear we didn't know she was working with that bastard. That bitch had deceived her own family. Patriarch Ren trembled with rage, his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Ren Sha, his own flesh and blood, had betrayed them. At first, the Immortal Sword clan had assumed the worst, that Tian Yang had killed her when she failed to return after the incident at the immortal confinement dungeon. But alas, the truth was far worse than they thought. That unfilial wretch acted on her own. I am willing to swear on my soul. Matriarch Ren added. In the end, the Immortal Sword clan faced no consequences for Ren Sha's actions. However, Ren Sha herself was declared a traitor, exiled from the family, and branded a criminal alongside Tian Yang. As for Culez, the 9 immortal clans scoured the divine heavens in search of him. Given his colossal size, they assumed tracking him down would be effortless. Yet, to their astonishment, not a single trace of him could be found even after months of relentless pursuit. It was as if he had vanished from the world. Tian Yang and Ren Sha would continue targeting the 9 immortal clans, slaughtering their members one by one, forcing the 9 immortal clans to place a bounty on their heads, and spreading their names throughout the divine heavens. Eventually, their bounty reached the immortal monastery's sister son. Big news. I have urgent news for you. Elder Jing burst into the room, her breath uneven, eyes alight with urgency. Elder Sun turned, her gaze calm. What is it? That disciple you've never stopped thinking about, he's alive. Tian Yang is alive. Elder Jing exclaimed, her voice trembling with emotion. Elder Sun's breath caught in her throat, her eyes widening in sheer disbelief. What? Is that true? Did he return to the sect? Where is he? In that instant, the years of sorrow that had weighed upon her lifted as if they had never existed, vanishing so swiftly that the transformation was almost tangible. However, Elder Sun's excitement quickly vanished after seeing Elder Jing's hesitant expression. Hurry up and spill it. Elder Sun urged. About that, although Tian Yang is alive, he hasn't returned to the sect. In fact, it might be better if he never returns. Why would you say something like that? Elder Sun raised her voice in anger. Because there's a bounty on his head, placed by none other than the 9 immortal clans. Elder Jing revealed with a serious expression. Elder Sun's breath hitched, her mind racing. What? Why would they? Do you remember me telling you about that madman slaughtering their members? Elder Jing continued. That madman was Tian Yang all along. Silence fell between them. Elder Sun stood frozen, her mind struggling to grasp the weight of those words. Tian Yang. But why would he go after the 9 immortal clans? Elder Sun mumbled as she began pondering. But her thoughts were quickly interrupted by Elder Jing. Who cares about that? We have a bigger issue at hand. If they learn that Tian Yang is a disciple of our sect, they might come after the immortal monastery. Until the moment Tian Yang rescued Kulas, the 9 immortal clans had only known him as Xiao Yang. However, in the chaos of Kulas's rescue, Tian Yang revealed his true name, which was heard by the guard there. Naturally, when the guard reported everything he had witnessed during the incident, he did not fail to mention the name he had overheard, Tian Yang. However, even with this crucial piece of information, it didn't mean the 9 immortal clans would immediately know everything about him, as his name wasn't unique to him, with many other people bearing the same name in the divine heavens. The 9 immortal clans wouldn't come after the immortal monastery just because of a single disciple. Elder Sun shook her head. Even if they try to blame us, we can just claim he went rogue and hasn't been part of the sect for a long time, which is true. If you say it like that, I guess, but what about you? What are you going to do now? Elder Jing then asked. And what do you expect me to do in this situation? Beg the 9 immortal clans to spare Tian Yang, a man who no longer has any connection to me. Elder Sun scoffed, her voice cold and indifferent. HMPH. Don't be ridiculous. Yet, Elder Jing wasn't convinced by her act, as her earlier reaction spoke louder than any words Elder Sun could utter. You can leave now. I'm going to cultivate, Elder Sun said a moment later. Okay. Knowing Elder Sun needed time to digest the news, Elder Jing didn't linger and left shortly after. Tian Yang, Elder Sun mumbled, her voice barely audible as she gazed out the window, her eyes distant and unfocused. The light from outside cast soft shadows across her beautiful face, yet her expression remained unreadable. Yuan slowly opened his eyes, and his vision blurred as if emerging from a dream that had stretched beyond time itself. How long have I been asleep? He muttered, his voice hoarse, each word feeling foreign on his tongue. After absorbing the heaven-refining crystal, Yuan collapsed from sheer exhaustion, sinking into a deep sleep. He had no way of knowing how much time had passed. Weeks, maybe even months had passed. When he finally woke up, he took a moment to assess himself. His body didn't feel any stronger on the surface, but deep within, there was a distinct shift. Something new and unfathomable had appeared. However, despite having consumed the heaven-refining crystal, Yuan wasn't certain it would actually have any effect. After all, he was inside an artificial world. No matter how powerful the founder of the immortal monastery was, Yuan found it hard to believe that he could replicate something as extraordinary as the heaven-refining crystal. No, this world is much more than it appears. Yuan eventually came to this conclusion. After all, for the heaven-refining crystal to exist in this world, the founder would have needed prior knowledge of its existence. Yet, as far as Yuan knew, he was the only one who had ever possessed it in his past life. No one else should have even been aware of its presence. Yuan had concluded that the City of Radiance was a mere imitation, missing key details that should have been present, gaps that existed simply because its creator lacked complete knowledge. However, this artificial world felt different. There was an uncanny realism to it, a depth that blurred the line between illusion and reality. It reminded Yuan of the first time he had stepped into Cultivation Online years ago when everything had felt astonishingly real. This world can't be real, right? Even a cultivation god would not have the capability to create a world like this, Yuan muttered. Despite his doubts about the nature of this world, Yuan chose not to dwell on it for now. There were too many uncertainties, and overanalyzing it would only further complicate things. For the moment, he would focus on what lay ahead. Yuan wanted to test his heaven-refining physique, but there was nothing inside the chambers to test it with, and the immortal monastery confiscated his belongings before tossing him into seclusion. In the end, Yuan continued his mental training. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and before Yuan realized, his 2-year confinement had come to an end. The day before Yuan's release from the confinement chambers, Elder Bai arrived outside the cave where Yuan had been confined. Without a word, he settled himself before the entrance with a cold and serious expression on his face, looking like he was preparing for war. It wasn't just Elder Bai. One by one, disciples began gathering outside Yuan's confinement cave, forming a growing crowd. Despite the passage of 2 years, Bai Zan's death remained a scar on the sect, one that time had failed to heal. Rather than fading, the disciples' resentment toward Yuan had only grown. In Bai Zan's absence, they had come to realize just how much his presence had shaped the sect, how his charisma and strength had been a guiding light. Without him, the sect felt emptier, duller, an absence that only deepened their hatred for the one responsible for his death. Do you think Elder Bai will kill him the moment he comes out? The disciples began mumbling to each other. Probably. I would if I were in his shoes. Elder Bai's demeanor has changed drastically since senior apprentice brother Bai's death. He used to be gentle and approachable. Now, I can't even look at him without shivering in fear. I don't think I have seen him smile once, either. Meanwhile, Lan Yingying and the others were also in the crowd. They knew how much the disciples hated Yuan and that his release from confinement would be dramatic, but none of them could have anticipated how many people would show up. Practically every outer court disciple is here, and there are even many inner court disciples, she merely mumbled in a nervous voice. I hope he'll be fine, Lan Yingying sighed. The following day, Yuan stopped his mental training when he noticed the boulder that sealed the cave was being moved. Has it been 2 years already? Yuan muttered as he rose to his feet. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, walking toward the light. As he emerged from the cave, the warmth of the sunlight washed over him, a sensation he hadn't felt in what seemed like an eternity. The gentle touch of the breeze, the scent of the open air, it all felt almost foreign after so long in isolation. However, his brief moment of reprieve was quickly overshadowed by the heavy atmosphere surrounding him. The sight of the gathered crowd, their piercing gazes filled with hostility, and the oppressive silence that hung in the air immediately drew his attention. However, despite the thick tension in the air and the overwhelming killing intent directed at him, Yuan met their gazes with an unwavering calm. His expression remained composed, devoid of fear or hostility, as if the hatred surrounding him was nothing more than a passing breeze. After a brief silence, a cold and imposing voice shattered the stillness. Are you the one who killed my grandson? Yuan's gaze shifted toward the speaker, an elderly man standing at the forefront of the crowd, his presence radiating an oppressive aura. With each slow step he took forward, the air itself seemed to constrict, growing heavier with an unseen force that pressed upon everyone present. The sheer weight of his presence was suffocating, yet Yuan remained still, his expression unreadable as he faced the old man's piercing gaze. Sorry, I think you have the wrong guy. To everyone's surprise, Yuan blatantly lied before Elder Bai's face. So you're telling me that you're not Xiaoyang and that you didn't kill Bai Zan? Elder Bai's voice trembled with barely restrained fury, his entire body quivering as he struggled to contain the emotions surging within him like an